thank you, Shane and Jamie, for having me today. Like we said, my name is Nobel-Lang. I work with the Advanced Care Planning Program with the Sask Health Authority. Sometimes I'm going to say ACP instead of Advanced Care Planning just because it gets really wordy, if you're wondering what I'm talking about. So like I said, we've been around about 2 years now, but we've primarily focused on staff education and getting all the SHA staff up to snuff. So we're just starting to branch out more publicly. So I'm really, really excited to be here today. Like Shane said, it can be a little bit difficult over Zoom for me to see all your questions as I'm presenting. So if you want to type them in the chat, I've left plenty of time. I've made this pretty brief so that we can have any good discussions afterwards. This is the ACP basics, but I want to get in depth about what matters to you and what's interesting to you later. So we'll definitely have time to talk afterwards. This is just a quick thing, I think that advanced care planning, education, and conversations, they really contribute to compassion, respect, and patient family-centered care, which is something we're trying to center within the SHA. Shane did a lovely Treaty Land acknowledgement, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I am on Treaty 6 in Saskatoon today myself, and you guys may be in 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, or 10 today, all over the province. And I just point this out not just to tick a box, but I think it's good to start with the history of this land in mind. And I think that advanced care planning can be a really great tool in closing that gap in health outcomes between Indigenous folks and non-Indigenous folks, bringing autonomy and patient voices into the forefront of health conversations. So today we're going to take a look at advanced care planning, what it is and why it matters. So Saskatchewan law guides advanced care planning in the province, who your substitute decision maker is, how we name them. It sets the rules around communicating your wishes. And we have kind of 5 steps that you can go through to help you get started with advanced care planning. So I just want to start with a really brief video to get everyone kind of in the headspace of what we're talking about today. So I'm just going to really play this short video here.
Connections shape our lives. Every relationship we nurture forms the foundation of who we are. But have you ever thought about how your wishes and the care you want to receive can impact those connections? That's where advanced care planning comes in. It's not just about filling out forms. It's about engaging in meaningful conversations. Together, you're creating a future where your wishes are understood and everyone feels supported. Planning ahead isn't just for the unexpected. It's about creating trust and clarity. Every conversation today shapes the care you'll receive tomorrow. Create a future of care and connection that reflects what matters most to you. Start the conversation today. Visit advancedcareplanning.ca to take the first step.
So that's just a really short video from Advanced Care Planning Canada. If you're ever looking for some more resources, we have plenty on our website, but they're a really great Canada-wide organization that can provide really great information. It's not going to have that Saskatchewan-specific legal lens, but they're really good at getting you thinking about this stuff. So I always recommend them for anyone who just wants to dip their toes in a little bit thinking about this. So when we talk about advanced care planning, what are we talking about? So advanced care planning is a process of thinking ahead and sharing what matters most for your future healthcare. While ACP is about your future healthcare and often around your wishes towards the end of life, advanced care planning processes can start right now. Many people start to plan big life changes, right? It's a really great thing to include around those changes, like, getting married, divorce, retiring, becoming a grandparent, or being diagnosed with a disease. As your life changes, your preferences might change a lot too. So that's why it's a process, and we really want to stress that. This is not a one and done event. And at the heart of this process is talking to the people that matter the most to you, including your healthcare professionals. So a lot of people tend to think of advanced care planning as the process of creating legal documents, but it's so much more than that. You can do a lot of robust planning without ever creating a healthcare directive. Advanced care planning isn't just for you, but it really does help everyone with your care. First, it gives you more control over your healthcare journey, right? When you've made your wishes known, you're guiding your healthcare even when you can't speak for yourself. It also helps your healthcare team, though. It helps them understand what's important to you so they can offer you healthcare in a way that's respectful and aligned with your goals. For your loved ones, having a plan in place means that there's less guesswork and stress in difficult times, and they can be confident that they're doing what you would want. In many situations, someone close to you may need to make those decisions for you, and having conversations with them, it makes them feel confident, it makes them feel supported. So if family, close friends, and your family doctor are in your circle and they understand your wishes, then the person making healthcare decisions isn't carrying that burden alone either. They've got other people to talk it out with. But if no one has these conversations, then there's a list of decision makers the healthcare team legally has to go to. This might work for some people, and for others it might not. But it's who we're going to have to ask to make a decision for you either way. Advanced care planning makes sure your voice can still be heard and that the people around you feel supported to make the right decisions for your health. So in Saskatchewan, like I said, advanced care planning is shaped by the law. So we have the Healthcare Directives and Substitute Healthcare Decision Makers Act of 2015. Just going to call it the legislation from here on out. Every province and territory has some version of this, but they do differ. So here in Saskatchewan, this law explains two really important things. How to make your wishes known in writing, and who can make healthcare decisions for you if you can't speak for yourself. We've got some legal terms that come up here that we'll get more in depth to, but I just want to talk a little bit about them. Capacity. So capacity means that you understand the health information and the impacts a decision has on your healthcare. So whenever we're talking about someone else making a decision for you or going to a healthcare directive, we are assuming that you don't have capacity. If you have capacity, you're calling the shots. You get to make your own calls. A healthcare directive. So this is a document where you can write down your healthcare preferences. You can also use it to name someone you trust to make healthcare decisions for you if you're unable to. That person would be called your substitute decision maker. This is an umbrella term for someone who will make healthcare decisions for you if you're too ill or injured to make your own decisions. There's different types of substitute decision makers. So one type is a proxy. It's a substitute decision maker that you choose or appoint to make healthcare decisions for you if you can't. If you appoint a proxy, they're the first person the healthcare team would go to in the event that you couldn't make your own decisions. If you haven't appointed a proxy, then they have to go to that list that I was talking about, the legal nearest relative. It's a specific list of family members who can make healthcare decisions for you, and it must be followed in the order of the list. The first person who is willing, available, and able to make healthcare decisions is your substitute healthcare decision maker. So this is why advanced care planning is really helpful. Gives guidance for those moments when you can't speak for yourself, even if it's just temporary. We're not always talking long-term thing here. It can just be for a couple of days. So I think we should go through this process. We've talked about it. There's 5 general steps that you can go through in order to get the process moving. You do not have to go in order, and it will take a lot of time. This is not something that you're going to sit down and just have everything fine and dandy in 20 minutes. So each step helps us build a clear, thoughtful plan. And you can start wherever feels best to you. Often people start on think. So thinking about what matters to you, how you like to live your life, and what you like to do every day. What are your values, beliefs, and understandings about your health and goals? Learning about your health. Learn who your substitute decision maker is if you suddenly can't make your own decisions. If you have a health condition, learning about what living with it might look like in the future, on what decisions you might have to make in the future, how that condition may impact your life. And then choosing your substitute decision maker. Figure out who your nearest relative is and decide if you need to appoint a proxy. So choose someone you respect and trust to follow your wishes and is able to speak for you when you can't speak for yourself. And then sharing what's important to you. Share your values, beliefs, and wishes with your substitute decision maker, your family members and friends who are important to you. Tell your healthcare team. And if you have a written plan, share it with them. And recording your wishes in legal documents, if that's what's best for you. Doesn't always have to be the case. Give a copy of your healthcare directive to your substitute decision maker or proxy, close family or friends, and your family physician. Keep a copy on or next to your fridge. So we'll get a little more in depth into each of these steps and what that can look like. So if we're starting with thinking, we're thinking about what matters most to you in life. It could just be simply being independent, staying in your home, or being able to talk with family. For some people, it's going to be comfort. For others, it's going to be connection in whatever way with other humans. For some, it's truly just being able to make their own decisions. There's no right answer, there's just your answer, right? And these might change significantly throughout your lifetime, depending on where you're at, right? I think a lot of people, especially maybe people who have young children, sometimes they will be willing to tolerate a heck of a lot more just to be there in some capacity for their young children. People who have more independent adult children might start to say, I'm going to prioritize my comfort a little bit more than just hanging in there. So this is something we want to revisit. Learning is a huge part of advanced care planning. So advanced care planning is not just like making a list of healthcare treatments you want or don't want. It's about what's important to you and using that to inform healthcare decisions you'll have to make over time. So if you have a chronic condition or a specific disease, you want to learn how that will impact your life. A new diagnosis or a chronic disease, it raises questions that you might want answers to in order to inform your planning. So this could involve talking to your doctor, talking to your healthcare team, your nurse, learning more like possible treatment options, possible side effects of those. What kind of things are likely can I anticipate might happen in the course of this illness? How does that impact my life? How does that impact my loved ones? It's also really important to learn about the legislation. So I'm very happy that you're here today. We can talk a little bit. I think lots of people start with healthcare directives. That's what we think of when we think of advanced care planning. So a healthcare directive is simply your voice on paper for a time when you can't make healthcare decisions for yourself. You can't speak them. There's two different kinds of healthcare directives. There's a specific healthcare directive, which is clear instructions for a specific situation. This is often used when people have a long-term illness. They understand how their illness might progress. So for example, they have early dementia. They may write a specific healthcare directive that says, if in advanced dementia, I can't recognize my family anymore, then you can really start to focus on comfort. I don't really want any CPR resuscitation. Not really interested in long-term tube feeds. A general healthcare directive gives broad healthcare guidance based on how you like to live your life. So for example, you could say, my goal is to maintain my independence and be able to look after myself in my own home. When that's not possible, I'm less interested in life-prolonging treatments. So you can have specific and general guidance and you can update it at any point. So a lot of people will start off with something quite general. And then as they progress in an illness, they're diagnosed with something, that's when it starts to get more specific, when they can reasonably foresee things happening for them. Your newest directive is the only one that counts, right? So if you wrote one 25 years ago, it's still valid, whether it fits your life now or not. And then if you wrote one yesterday, it's going to wipe out all the other ones you wrote before. So there's a lot of pros and cons to creating a healthcare directive. They can be really useful for some individuals and situations, but they're just one tool that we have in advanced care planning, and they aren't needed by absolutely every adult. Some people would say that, as soon as you turn 18, you should have one, but there are some drawbacks for some people to consider. So, we can't always guarantee, in an emergency, healthcare teams treat first if they can't find your healthcare directive, right? They're not just going to leave you there while trying to find it. Hopefully we have a system we'll talk about more so that it's readily available in your home, readily available at the hospital. But, if you collapse on the street, we're not going to go calling everyone first. Sometimes directions are really vague. Anyone can create a healthcare directive in any format. So sometimes there's things like, I just don't want any heroics, or, we don't really know what that means as a healthcare team. What are heroics? It might mean something completely different to you than it means to the next person. Or it can be really ultra specific instructions that can be really hard to apply in a real world experience. Clinical appropriateness means that, while you can decline any care you want, but you can't require care that clinicians consider non-beneficial or it's unsafe or just not something that they would be offering in this scenario, right? We're still going to give appropriate care. It's not just you're writing your own orders now. And we're always stuck at the resources of the setting that you're in, right? So there's different resources available in different locations throughout the province. We know there can be a big difference if you're in way remote northern Saskatchewan or if you're here at RUH in Saskatoon like I am. So that can shape what's possible. A challenge with healthcare directives, and the primary thing I look at, is they don't always do what you as the creator intended. So if a person does not have a specific disease or illness, it's very challenging to write a directive that will be applicable to the future health situation they end up facing, right? We have no idea what's ahead of us, and there's no way you could write a list of every single thing that might happen to you and what your wishes are for each scenario. There's just no way. Nor do people have such an in-depth understanding of all fields of medicine that they can truly understand and appreciate what all possible interventions look like. So there's this long-standing trend to choose medical interventions, tick boxes, write them down without any context. And then it has this risk of a treatment not being considered because you checked X to that box, when perhaps the person would have accepted it. So a really good example is a feeding tube, right? A feeding tube keeping you alive, if you don't have what you consider to be a good quality of life, is something a lot of people want to avoid. They have understandable fears about that. However, you could face a situation like some severe facial injury, right? In which a temporary feeding tube would keep you fed while you healed back to a reasonable quality of life, just in the short term. And maybe it would be something you'd be willing to try if you could make decisions at the time, but your healthcare directive said absolutely no feeding tube because you were picturing long-term permanent feeding tubes, right? So it's just considering things like that. So writing a healthcare directive at 50 and not revisiting it to feel confident it still reflects your goals and wishes and risks that outdated information being considered when a healthcare decision is required when you're 75. If a healthcare directive is never discussed with your substitute decision maker or healthcare team, it may not give the substitute decision maker confidence that you're expecting to provide to them. So all in all, again, ongoing conversations with the people you trust about your future health could end up being a better option to ensure that your wishes are followed as much as possible. And if you make a healthcare directive, you still want to have those conversations with people. Make sure they understand it. But that being said, I'm not saying that a healthcare directive can't be a great tool, because it really, really can. It can make sure your wishes are respected. So A healthcare directive can serve someone with a strong conviction, perhaps a faith belief that relates to their care. They're really great for someone who doesn't have people they're super close to who would be great as a substitute decision maker. Um, but they really want to have a say in their care when they're unable to make their own decisions. Someone with a chronic disease who knows how it will shape their future is more likely to be able to write clear instructions about what's acceptable to them. Um, so I think often you're participating, in um, support groups if we're in a group like this, right, where we know that we have a specific diagnosis. This is where healthcare directives can be more appropriate. Um, so it can really support your substitute decision maker and the healthcare team and give the person confidence that they're being heard, right? And give the substitute decision maker that confidence that they know what you want. In order to create a useful healthcare directive, just make sure you're saying what matters in plain language. You don't have to write everything in medical jargon. If they know what you want, it helps them, right? You can even just create some priorities, right? Called priorities ladder. I think the first most important thing to me is comfort. Second is being at home. Third, I don't want a lot of burdensome interventions. And fourth, longevity, right? You can revisit your healthcare directive and your substitute decision maker after major events. And you can seek additional help by asking to speak to your healthcare team to make sure you've realistically planned ahead. And that can help you make a more effective healthcare directive. So when we're talking about who can make healthcare decisions on your behalf, the law states when you're too unwell or injured to make your own decisions, we can use a substitute decision maker to make decisions for you. They would need to follow your healthcare directive if it was applicable to the situation. But like we said, there could be plenty of things that you never anticipated happening. So let's look a little closer at that nearest relative list we talked about and proxies. So if you ever need someone to make healthcare decisions for you, and you haven't legally named someone as your proxy, we have this list, the legal nearest relative. It's a list of people who can speak for you, and healthcare providers must follow the list in order. You're not allowed to skip people because they feel like someone else feels like a better fit. It's also important to know that a substitute decision maker is not the same thing as a next of kin or emergency contact. Those don't really have a definition. A power of attorney is for finances, not for medical decisions. So you might have someone listed at your doctor's office as an emergency contact. That doesn't automatically mean they can make healthcare decisions for you. So it's important to know about the legislation while you have capacity and can decide. So a substitute decision maker has to be willing, available, and able to make healthcare decisions for you. They also have to be making decisions in your best interest, what they know of what you would want. As you can see here, I'm going to zoom in on this list. So for a lot of people, this list works out just fine if you think of your own family when reading this, but it certainly does not suit everyone. So while legally adopted family members are included, you might notice cousins aren't recognized as a nearest relative in the law. Neither are step or foster relationships. It also starts with the eldest in each category and goes down to the youngest before moving on to the next category. So to paint an example, let's say you and your spouse live with your youngest child. Your spouse has a lot of difficult history with illness, hospitals, and they really struggle to talk about medical decisions. They've got some of that medical trauma. Your eldest child lives in Europe and isn't regularly in touch. You may think that your youngest child, who accompanies you to all your medical appointments, would be a great fit to make decisions for you. If you don't appoint them as the proxy, the healthcare team would have to go to your spouse for decisions. If your spouse declines, of knowing how hard medical decisions are for them, we would still have to go to your eldest child. So in my career, I've met a lot of people at the hospital who didn't know about this legislation, but it was clear that the nearest relative list was not their best option for a substitute decision maker. So it'd be great for those people to consider a proxy. And we can look at how that happens. So a proxy is a type of substitute decision maker that you choose to speak for you. It requires more than thinking who would speak for you and talking to them about it. You have to do some legal paperwork. So to do that, you appoint a proxy by writing down the person's name and contact information, dating and signing the paper. Our program has a template that can be used that I recommend. It's a simple one sheet that gives you all the options to write them down, sign and date it, and have a legal proxy. A proxy can be any adult who is willing, available, and able. But you should really talk to them. Let them know. Sometimes we see where someone's written down their neighbor, whoever, not told them, but that can be a really big shock to the person when they're called to make decisions for you. A proxy should be someone who can speak openly with and they understand what matters to you. They'll have to be someone that respects your wishes, even if they're uncomfortable or disagree. So you can appoint someone as proxy, but then also appoint someone as backup, if the first person is not able at the time. That's what we call successive proxies. So you can also appoint more than one to act jointly. They would have to come to a consensus on the decisions to be made. Just be sure that you think those people would be likely to cooperate. Sometimes it sounds really good. I'll write down all my kids and they have to come to the same decision, but sometimes we know siblings don't always like to agree on things. A proxy can always decline being substitute decision maker, but they can't assign the next substitute decision maker. If you haven't appointed a successive proxy, then we're going to go to that nearest relative list and start from the beginning. I'm sure you guys may have more questions on this, so feel free to write them down now and we can get to this when we finish up here. So in that learning, you might also find yourself as a substitute decision maker for someone else that you love at some point. If you've been asked to be a substitute decision maker, start talking about things early. The conversations are often easier early on, and they help you understand how they want to live, what gives them comfort, dignity, meaning. Knowing the person's values and wishes for a meaningful life makes making decisions easier. You also don't need to do it alone. Talk with family, close friends, healthcare team. Some communities, you might have access to SHA. We've got First Nation and Métis health advisors, social workers, palliative care, a whole lot of team members that can help you out. There's also community-based supports as well, maybe faith-based, maybe disease-specific support groups like this wonderful one. Some of these might be communities across the province, some might need a phone call, but you just don't have to carry that burden alone. This is something that you or your substitute decision maker can get support on. So, like we said, you can always say no, they can say no. And it can be temporary for one decision or permanently. So sometimes when we say available, all we're meaning is a simple phone call. You don't have to be at bedside 24/7. I have another short little video here where we move on to choose and how we choose a substitute decision maker. Okay. So when we talk about choosing, we're talking about who do you want to speak for you? If not you, then who, we always say. It might be a spouse or a child, but it could be someone else entirely, like a friend or a step sibling. Um, think about who really knows you, who you can be honest with, and who can stay calm under pressure. Um, they need to be willing, available, and able, like we said. If someone lives far away and is difficult to reach or avoids hard conversations, they might not be the best choice, no matter how much they love you. Sometimes people choose a proxy based on their closest relationships, which can be really important, but it's also important to know you don't have to import a relative, right? If you have a spouse who you have a long and fantastic relationship with, they love you so much that you're actually just not confident that you can 100% trust them to respect your wishes about when you would no longer wish to pursue any life prolonging treatment. They would do anything to keep you around, you're pretty sure. But you have a best friend who you talk to about health challenges and your wishes for the future, and you feel that you're both on the same page about when you're just hoping to look at comfort only. And so maybe that best friend is a better choice. It's not a competition of love, right? So it's important to remember that. So once you've chosen someone and you've thought about your goals, wishes, learned about your health on the legislation, it's time to share. So starting these conversations can be hard. They really can. But it's often good to begin with something that's recently happened to you. So you might say, I was at the doctor last week for my annual physical. So it got me thinking about what I'd want if my health ever changed. Um, or you might say, hey, I sometimes talk about how I have pulmonary fibrosis. I've been hoping to talk to you a little bit about what that might mean in the future. Or you might say, I just saw Loren do this amazing presentation that I went to, and so I want to talk a bit more about that. It just can really ease into that conversation for people. Another way I also like is a little game. Sometimes that just makes things easier if we gamify it a bit. It can help you alone or it can help you have these conversations. So I can show you some of this. For this game, I want you to think about what your goals are for your future health, your wishes and worries. What's an acceptable quality of life? What would you be willing to go through to achieve that? So these are the conversations that your substitute decision maker needs to have the confidence to make decisions on your behalf. So there's a little card game. There's one you can access online called Go Wish Canada, or we have the ACP Canada game has cards that can be printed off. I will quickly run through the online Go Wish game today. We're not going to do it in depth because we're virtual, but I can show you some examples for your own time. And we can look through it. So I'm going to pop open the link right away here. And it's just interesting. I would love to see what you think about it. All it's going to do is give you different cards with different priorities on them. So I'm going to open this up here. And can you guys tell me, can you see the Go Wish site or is it still the presentation? Probably still the presentation, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I'm just going to sit out here. I will go right back. There we go. Okay, and it's going to be really loud when I click this card. I can't turn off the volume, so I apologize. Don't jump.
Not done alone.
So if you can see this, this is the Go Wish game. So there's a bunch of different ways you can play it, but if you're playing it by yourself, it's going to give you these cards with a priority. It gives you, I believe, 10 slots for very important, the most important things. Then we go down to somewhat important or not important. It's a really good way to start thinking about how you might like to prioritize your wishes, because we can't have everything, right? So this is how we can prioritize. There's also ways you can play it with each other. You can get your substitute decision maker to do this how they think you would want, and you can correct them if needed, but it's something you can start. So we just can click.
Not dying alone.
That's very important.
To have my family with me.
Not going to do this too long because it's very loud, but As you see, you're just
To
flipping
prevent
through
arguments by making sure my family knows what I want.
and say, well, that's not top of the list. And it's going to
To
keep going
trust my
through.
doctor. To die at home.
And you can keep going. So there's a lot of cards in here. There's also some that are wild card. You can write in your own thing that's important to you. So this is really great just to go through and get you thinking if you're struggling to figure out exactly what you need to talk about or exactly what those wishes are for you. And some of these cards might conflict a little bit, right? We've sometimes had people talk about, one of my top things is to not die connected to a bunch of tubes. I don't want that. But they'll also say, well, I would like to be an organ donor, which does require some of that. So having to think about, which of those is more important. So I do think that it can be a useful tool if you struggle to have those conversations. So I'll get back to my slideshow here. Okay, so once you've done all that, you're feeling confident, it's time to record if that's what feels right for you. Put your healthcare wishes in writing as legal documents. So it's your choice, do what works for you. You can appoint a proxy or write healthcare wishes in a healthcare directive. You can do one or both or neither, totally up to you. So if you decide that creating the legal paperwork is best for your situation, it's a good idea to have your document signed by a witness. It's not needed in Saskatchewan, but if you travel, a lot of other provinces require a witness signature. Your witness cannot be your proxy or your proxy's spouse. Once you appoint a proxy or put wishes in a healthcare directive, you should sign it and date it. It's legal until you revoke it. So you can revoke it verbally or to a doctor, or you can do it in writing. However, if you create a new signed and dated healthcare directive, the old one's automatically considered void. You must have capacity to make your own healthcare decisions to make these documents. Our program has workbooks available to you to create a healthcare directive. You can print from our website or contact us to mail you one. We're happy to do so. Right now we have a longer workbook, but we're in the process of creating an updated and streamlined workbook that should be available very shortly if the current one's a bit overwhelming for you. Totally understand. We also have a Yellow Sleeve program, and it's in place to store your advanced care planning documents like a healthcare directive or proxy appointment. It's this yellow plastic page protector that's kept on or near your fridge. We know everyone has a fridge most places, and in an emergency, paramedics look there to quickly find it. We can instruct people from the hospital to go look there. So the medical team has all your information. It's important to keep this updated though, right? Just like that. So everything's in one page. So we mail out these packages to any Sask resident at no charge. I'll show you our website after. You can call, email, or visit, fill out the form there, and we'll send one out to you. So last thing, I think there's two really important things for everyone to know. And if you forget everything else, that's okay, as long as you remember these two things from today. So the first thing, I just really urge you to know who your substitute healthcare decision maker is. Is your legal nearest relative appropriate, or do you want to be appointing a proxy? And second is that advanced care planning is about conversations on your personal wishes and preferences with people you trust in your healthcare team. Share your values, goals, wishes with the people closest to you to give them clarity and confidence to support you. It's not just about that legal paperwork. So I am going to shortly put up this information here before I close out my presentation. There's a QR code that goes to our website, but I'll also make sure that Shane and Jamie have all this information as well. You can get a hold of us. If you have questions, you're more than welcome to email or call, or our website has a lot of information as well. So I am going to stop sharing now so I can see your lovely faces and the chat. And I think I am good to answer some questions here. Any comments, questions, concerns?